I'll see if it says going live. I believe I'm live, and I believe it captured all that stuff up to this. I'll assume it did, and that this is just slow redraw stuff. And you're welcome to chime in and say stuff. I'll check in on you every once in a while. And so we are going to okay, so in situations like this, when you want to share your files freely between systems, there's really a lot of choices. Increasingly, copying stuff up to and down from GitHub is becoming the easiest choice, right? Because you're going to have Git on your machine just to do standard development work. So the temptation is to just move files around by making a repo, pushing it all the way up to GitHub, and then back down. That's kind of stupid because of all the extra delay, overhead, privacy issues if there's anything that you don't want out there. This is typically a way to move passwords and credentials around. You don't want to put those in GitHub. So we already have the perfect interface for moving files around, and that's just copying files between drives. So we should continue to enjoy that simple interface, even with all these different hosts, containers, cloud servers, and whatnot. In other words, all 4 of these locations that I currently have in play will have a home data location, ~/data, except of course for Windows that doesn't use that convention, and we'll use a drive letter for that. And there is a broader issue to address here, just to make sure that people understand. To make a data folder like that accessible everywhere, its primary location should not really be on your laptop, because when your laptop goes offline, everything else using it loses contact. So it's time to talk about a network server in your house. Okay, I use a Qnap network application server. It's a good choice. You could use a Raspberry Pi. It's really basically any piece of hardware running Linux, a fairly standard network capable Linux. And you set that up for running things 24/7. Really, it's a place where you can just plug your containers in, right? Because we're doing this whole container thing. So things are slowing down a bit. That's pretty terrible performance I'm receiving in my browser. I'm going to take a look if there's anything I can get rid of. Well, I hate to quit out of Jupyter because I'll be talking about this email project soon. But that is one of the places I can save a little memory there. Let's take a look at the streaming. We are still streaming. No one currently there. Well, no concurrent viewers 1. It's so difficult to understand the interface there. So we start out by making a network share. So these are my network shares on my network application server. So it's a physical box just sitting over there, and it has its own web user interface for it. Yuck, 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 come on. The browser is here. And this is us logged into the Qnap server, and it should just be on its its default when you log in screen. So you have a number of different things you can do. There's App Center, Control Panel, File Station, and everything. But I happen to know that what you want to do is just go into Control Panel, and you set up a network share through here. And you make a network share by just going into Privilege, Shared Folders, and there's just a neat little interface here where you can choose a directory on one of your drives and say, hey, that's a public shared folder. And that's what I did here with data. And when I say public, it's public within your network. It's not necessarily public out there in the public. When you have these things locked down properly, it really can't be reached except for inside, your own network behind your local router. So this is the data drive, and this is the one that I have set up now. If we look at that picture, there is a location here outside the container where this thing really does exist on the hardware there, right? So the natural location of this folder is really out here on the NAS somewhere. So that's where you set it up in the first place, right? That's the real home location. And now the trick is to make this manifest in all these different locations. Here, Windows, that's the first one we'll do, right? So that's my written instructions that I opened up this session with, right? So we're going to add it first on the main Windows system on the laptop. So you use the Windows Explorer, which is usually the Windows key E. You paste your universal network path that represents your home network into the address bar, where you can drill down on it through the network icon. And then we're going to right click it and map a network drive and give it a letter. It's kind of silly. And I think I already have the D drive occupied by something else. So I'll do like the X drive or something. It doesn't matter. So these are the shared drives. If we click in there, you'll see the UNP, the Universal Network Path I'm talking about. This gets established just by services that run on a product like a NAS, right? In order to visualize it a little bit better, I'll just open a new tab here. You know what? I'm not going to be doing that email thing for a while, so I'm going to close out of that one. And Qnap NAS, just so that you have an image in your head of what we're talking about here. And their prices range dramatically, right? You can get them for $200, although they're usually not occupied with drives, so you'd have to spend another $100 per drive, $300, $400, $500. So you're at like $600 by the time it's done in order to deck out a 4-deck NAS. But I only have a 2 port NAS. So I have 2 4 terabytes drives in there, and I have them mirrored, so everything that goes on the first gets automatically copied to the second transparently, and so you're less likely to lose data, and then you do backups on top of that. And that's how at home, with relatively little work, you can have something like a cloud server in your home, which is really necessary to run services like this, like a shared file server. And it's not as hard or technical as it used to be. It's actually much easier. The most important thing in doing this is making sure that you secure it, that you do a few extra settings to make sure it's not accessible from the internet at large. So we'll map it as a network drive, and we'll look at our unused options. Oh, I do have the D drive available. I am going to use D because that is such a good choice for data. D drive is my data drive. Reconnect it, sign in, finish. And so now I have the D drive, and you can see the stuff I put on there before. It's stuff I talked about in earlier videos. Display.sh just broadcasts the DNS IP of my Linux host so that I can get graphics on my Linux containers. That's a sort of silly thing that I just keep there. And this is to get my color-coded prompts in all my different containers. So when I talk about the pretty color coding of the prompt, it comes from this script here, which I move around a lot between containers. So I'm putting it here. I'll probably put it in a GitHub repo. That's a good choice for a GitHub repo. But for temporary quick use, I put it here. And for the email project that's coming up, my logins, I need to move around, things with credentials. So I certainly don't want to put them up in GitHub. So I'll be dropping them here. So that's the first step. I have the D drive mapped. It's always now going to be easy to get to as the D drive on my system. If you don't believe me, we can open a DOS prompt, which you do by typing command prompt. And I can go CD to the D drive, D:\\, D:\, D:\. There I am. I forget a little bit how to use DOS. So you can switch to a D drive, and it's still not the drive that's showing in your prompt, and then you have to, DOS is going away. There's no reason for DOS to exist on this earth anymore, except in a special case where you have to like This is the thing that should be virtualized. We shouldn't have to virtualize Unix or Linux. We should have to virtualize DOS in those rare occasions where we still need to bring it up. But there you have it with the D drive mounted. So this part of the picture is done. We'll do some sort of color coding to show when we have it finished. That would be best in purple, an unused color at the moment. So check. All right, now we're going to do this one here. And that one here is what I am referring to sometimes as like a Linux host machine. Now it's already mounted, so I'm just going to show you the moves of what I did to do this. Maybe I'll do another video in the future where I do it for real. And it's not dependent on that drive letter mapping, which is kind of important to know, because what we're going to do down here is dependent on this step here. So we launch a Windows terminal to go into Linux, which is the number one thing I do, which is why it's the number one icon there, right? I just double click that and we're now in a Linux terminal in Windows, right? For those who don't get the point yet, this is still Windows. It might not look like it, but there's Windows back there. And I open these Windows terminal screens full screen and they are running Linux. So in that location, we want to make dir mount data. Now it's already there. So if I cd to mnt, this is a place where you put things that you want to import from other locations. It's a mount point. So because Linux and Unix play such the shell game with what is a physical drive, what is local, what is remote, what is a read-writable device other than a drive, right? Because lots of things are read-writable. Your monitor is read-writable. But this is a mount point where you can mount things in that are elsewhere. That is how Windows does the trick of getting your whole C drive accessible on the Linux side, right? So if we were to CD in through there, we would have the whole C drive. Now from here, you never want to like actually have to deal with a /mnt location. So once you get things mounted, you actually use symbolic links to make these things exist other places virtually in your system. So in order to make this folder here, this data folder, I used this very special and magical command, which probably is only possible because of special work Microsoft did. Why? Because even though it's a very common command up to this point, sudo mount, when it gets up to defining the type of file format of the device, it is this drvfs, which I believe is something that was innovated for the Windows subsystem for Linux, so that you could mount universal network paths that Microsoft knows about into locations that only make sense in your Linux environment, the forward slashes. So this is mapping that original data location. Let's see. Oh, I mount it directly into home Ubuntu data. That's very interesting. That is not what I was just describing right there with, oh, yeah, okay. So I'm going to have to update these instructions. I do believe that I had to change where it was mounted in order to make it persistent, in order to survive reboots. So this original location, instead of mapping it into my home location, I mapped it into mount data, and then to make it persistent, I had to sudo vim etc fstab. I hate having to do this stuff, but I had to make this entry here so that that mount point was persistent, so that every time the system rebooted, it came back with that location /MNT/data. Now, the fact that it is living under, it lives under my home directory under data means I must have had an entry in order to make a link to it. So we're in my journal. I can do that search. It's going to be something like /LN. Yeah, and there it is, hyphen, well, there's one like it for symbolic link. And I'll copy that one because that'll work as a good example. And I'll put that here, and then I'll change it. So now that we actually have the location, which is /mount/data, we want that to be home user Ubuntu location data. And now I fixed the instructions because, you know, I wrote these instructions in anticipation for this video because it's not really an easy thing. And so the steps really have been to make the mount point. You'd use a make dir because you can't connect a mount to a mount point that isn't really there. It has to have some sort of target. And then this uses universal network paths and a little bit of Windows subsystem for Linux magic, right? There's some Microsoft magic in here that makes this work in order to create that, that location in that mount point. And then you have to do this annoying step to make sure it comes back on every reboot, because your further things, your containers are going to depend on that being there, right? These depend on that host being there, being alive. You know it's alive because it's hosting these, because you can't run these without these running. So in order to run these, you know this is running, but while this is running, it has to have that drive available. And then finally, this point makes it live in a nice location. Now that I think about it, I might not have done this link because from that host, I don't really need it living in that location, because down here, when I configure it, I pull it from the mount point of the host machine, a more reliable place. In fact, I know I switched stuff around. I probably did it that other way originally, and then switched it to use the mount point directory for what it's really for. So anyway, I can actually cd to home and do an ls there and confirm that data really is there. Now, if I do an ls-la, it should also confirm that that location of data is a mount. Yeah, there it is. It's a symbolic link, right? So confirming what I really just said, right? Data is getting its stuff from /MNT/data. So that takes care of this one here. We now have that data drive, which is from the Windows, you know, it's not from the, that dependency isn't there. These dependencies are really to this here, which is broadcasting your NAS location, right? With a UNC path, universal network path, right? So this is what's broad. That looks like 11. So / path, right? So that's what's broadcasting that. So these things are really being mounted from that location technically. So is this, for that matter. All right. So it's time to get to this one. Probably the hardest one so far. And from there, to get that data drive there, it is these special commands right here. These, as opposed to mounts, right? So what's doing the magic up here? Mounts doing the magic. And symbolic links are doing the magic. Mounts and symbolic links, and a little bit of amazingness from, you know, Microsoft allowing this level of integration to occur. But the magic down here takes place with a parameter of the LXC command that we've been using so much recently, right? So it's LXC instead of these other commands like LXC execute to log in or LXC launch to create a new image. It's LXC config device. And then so this is where I'm going to fix a spelling. I misspelled Munchkin the other day. And so before I even do this, I'm going to fix this and get this down to one line so it has the right one in there. You might have seen me stumble in my previous videos because I had Munchkin spelled wrong. So I have how to rename a I think I do. There it is. How to rename a container. So we're going to do that. We're going to rename the container before I do that last step. And we go to an available terminal that has it there. I believe Munchkin is running. We're going to have to stop it first. So just a reminder, LXC is our basically unified command to do container management, just like systemctl is our unified command for systemd management. LXC is our unified command for container management, even though it's under LXD. And I'll try and start to use the names correctly. LexC, LexD. All right, so LXC stop. I am on the right machine. And the CD to home, clear, LXC, stop, LXC ls. Oh, it is. It stopped already. Okay, so it didn't let me complete it because it was already stopped. That's fine. So now we need the command, and I'll check if anyone's texting to me or even watching. This is one of these early morning live casts, so I don't even know if I have an audience. Yeah, there's 2 people here. All right, probably more because this thing is not always honest. So I use that command now to do the moving of the device. LXC move, name. It couldn't be easier, right? LXC move Munchkin to the correct spelling. Munchkin. I left out the I left out the N at the beginning, so there we have it. Now I won't be stumbling over the spelling as much. I hope that didn't break all my links and stuff, and if it did, I guess we'll reestablish it. But at any rate, now that you see, these container names here, it will make a little more sense to you, hopefully, that you can, delete this lower one. You can configure them with the LXC command. LXC config device add to Munchkin, a thing called data, which is going to be of type disk, and its source is going to be /mnt/data, which it knows it's from the host, see? And then this is on the client, right? So there's so much that's being hidden here, the name of these arguments or parameters. So LXC, what to do, config, what to config, a device, what to do with that device, add something, to which device Munchkin. Well, what is that device name going to be? It's going to be called data. Of what type is that device? It's going to be of type disk. From where are you going to find it? Well, from the host machine, it's going to be the mount point called data. And then where are you going to put it? Well, on the client machine in my user's home directory, user Ubuntu, in a directory called data. And it really is no harm to do symbolic links more than once or to configure things more than once. So I could go ahead over here to where we were doing this work, and I could type that again. There's no harm in that. Device already exists. It's telling me it already exists. That's great. So renaming it did not do any harm either. So I guess it's interesting now to show you the connection. If I were to do Windows E, and then I were to find my D drive, Here's my D drive. I will create a new file here. New text document. Hello world, hello world.txt, right? So I just created from the Windows side a text file called hello world. I could even go into that. We're in Notepad and I can go, hello there. Save, quit. So there's a hello world with a hello there in it. And then we can go to where we're making the, where we're doing this work. Okay, clear. Well, I'll not clear it. I'll keep it showing so that you can see what I'm doing. LXC, EXEC, Munchkin, M-U-N-C-H. There we go again. M-U-N-C-H-K-I-N. I don't think it's going to work. I'm going to have to run it twice. You watch. There's something weird going on here with command line completion knowing about the containers. But once you say that, you now can do the double minus signs for what you're going to execute. It's going to be switch user. It's going to be the login argument of switch user, and it's going to be to user Ubuntu. Container is not running. That's why. So we have to LXC start Munchkin. And there we have command line completion. And now we can start it. And see, cursor changes. Now I can even show you color coding that that requester to be just like the color coding here by going into data, CD. Well, first I can just do an LS. Look at that. See, there's data. It's highlighted differently because it's a symbolic link. We can go into data. We can do an LS there. And there is our display in our hello world. Vim, hello world. And there's our hello there, right? So that's being shared all the way from, all the way from this drive that I created on the NAS, right? Using the special software, I created that drive on the NAS, special software. Using the web user interface to get into the Qnap interface, I created that. We just took care of that. I just demonstrated that. And, oh, I guess we have this last one to do. And that will complete out this this live cast session because we will have that drive in all those locations. This is a little bit different than the others because it's living in a container that's hosted by, well, LXD, just like on my local laptop, but it's a physically separate machine. And in order to make it easier, not control panel, but App Center. Going through App Center. I don't keep very many apps running on my NAS. I don't like the surface area, but one that I do keep running is Container Station. Container Station is playing the role of LXD. In fact, underneath the surface, I'm sure it's using LXD. It's certainly using LXC. Container Station version 3 or later is ending support for LXC containers. Migrating to LXD. I understand and don't show me again. All right. So this is an LXD container, so that message does not really apply to me. This is the one I have running, and you can see I do have one running, and that I get to. We'll need one more. 8th desktop. That I get to through this icon here, which is an SSH command. It's actually this one here. It's an SSH command. It in fact even uses PowerShell and not even Linux to do the SSH just because it's running from the Windows host directly. And this is this, right? What I just logged into was that. So if I go over there and I do an ls, well, I'm in the GitHub directory. I put myself there automatically on so many of my machines. But if I do an ls there, you'll see the data drive there as well. And if I cd into the data drive, you will see, in fact, it is that same location. And so to get it into this final location, you're really just mapping it to a container hosted here on the same machine, you see. And so to get that last piece done, you would go, well, there should be something built into Qnap to do that, right? That seems like a pretty common thing to be able to do. Well, it is. It's a feature of Container Station. So you can go into, scroll down here, right? These are your resources, your image, your volume, your container. So it's going to your container. And let's see if I can remember how it's done. It's going to be some advanced settings somewhere. I guess you got to click the name of it. The check mark doesn't really matter that much. Let's maximize this. And now that you've gone into clicking the name, it's not the best user interface in the world. You had to know to click the name. But now that you've clicked the name, you have this much more capable user interface. And you can hit Settings. And under Settings, you have Advanced. See, right? No wonder so many people aren't doing this. And under there, you can see my address or my network configuration for that container. But here is shared folders. And that's it. I created an entry for shared folders that gets the volume from host, which is /data. And it creates the mount point /mount/data. So I can see even on this container, I put it into that /mount/data instead of directly into my user directory, which means I do have one more step to update on my instructions here. This very same thing here is, and after that command is done from the Linux host, the following command has to be done from inside the container login, from inside a container terminal session. I don't know. That's not it. It's just this line over again. That same link has to be done there. I think if I pick that up in my copy buffer, my operating system copy buffer, and pasted it over here, we would get the command that that link already exists. Oh, it didn't. Mount point data, home Ubuntu data. I really thought it did, because that's where we are right now. ls-la cd ... ls-la data. Yeah, it is. It is. It just didn't give me the message that that mount point was already there. It's getting it out of /mount/data. cd data ls. Yep, there all they are. So if I vim hello world and I say hello again, right? You understand the kind of integration that this is really providing. That was just done on a physically separate machine, in a container on a physically separate machine than the Windows machine I'm working on. And yet here is that Windows machine that I'm working on, my actual direct laptop. I double click into it and there's the hello again there, right? And again. Not seeing the save occur. I think I'm just going a little too fast for it here. And again, no, it's not there. It wasn't taking my my save command. Oh, it's not listening to my keystrokes. That is unresponsiveness. Huh. I'm just bogging my machine down with too much. Let me This recursion couldn't help. Turn off enable preview, minimize my broadcast. And, well, anyway, I get to check mark this one done. Right? These live casts don't have everything perfect. Now, I'm not going to keep it, ponder that for a moment, revel in our success. Then I'm just going to undo back to here for the diagram that I actually want saved. What is that going to be? Data, data everywhere. Oh, my responsiveness. I should be so careful. I think I'm going to wrap up the video here and bank the success before my machine becomes totally unresponsive. So I guess as a reminder, all of this is, to get off of Windows eventually. These steps, having your own place to run code on your home network, this is all taking steps towards getting Windows out of your life. And there are people who are chiming in on my channel. Double A Amazing 3 said, I haven't used Windows since 2010, except for maintaining my children's Windows systems they use for games. Windows is so antiquated and it's a real pain to use, LOL. It doesn't even come with a C compiler or Python or always on top. Garbage, LOL. Well, I generally agree with you, Double A Amazing 3, but I'm also advocating the use of Linux, which is, not very modern either. And in fact, Evgeny Fishgalov responds, in many ways you could argue Linux is antiquated. It doesn't feature a database approach to system configuration, doesn't have mandatory access control. Its shell does not allow object-oriented scripting and is not even able to invoke systems API. So there's always two sides to these arguments, Linux won, Unix-like operating systems won. It's where the world is going. Doesn't mean they're perfect. It doesn't mean it's modern. And that doesn't mean that the thing it's replacing, Windows, is all that great either. But we're striving towards simplicity. We're striving towards simplicity. I wish I could go into the diagram, but fewer moving parts. In fact, that's where I start a new entry. We're moving to a future with fewer moving parts. Lots to say there about surface area. Fewer moving parts. There's lots to say there about, surface area. But, that's not the way I want to say it. We're moving to a future with fewer moving parts where you focus on the parts that are in the container you're using. Complexity may be there, but it's hidden, and the systems you're using are much more trimmed down and abstracted. So your work is more portable and long-lived, right? That's what we're going towards here. And, these old, highly personal desktops are a liability. They crash, you lose all that special stuff. So we endeavor to make all that special stuff, just floating around and applicable to any of your containers. That's kind of what we did with that data folder. Now I can just performance allowing. That was a surprise in this video. Something bogged the system down. Now I can just performance allowing, connect, move my data, move data freely between any of the systems in the picture, right? It's hard to come up with a right way to say it, but you see, it has been so essential to allow that data location to just flow around. Okay, I don't want to close it on that note, but you get the point here, and I'll check to see if anyone's typing to me, and probably we'll wind it up here because I've documented now how I am moving those data locations around everywhere. Wow, it spiked pretty high around here. Tune in, tune out. Well, if anyone has any questions, there is one. Oh, Jens Ole Freeman. Oh, CRL. Yeah. You are. So Jens Ole Freeman say, couldn't there be a problem with sharing files across Unix and MS-DOS? The carriage return line feed problem? Yes, there are indeed those issues. But a few things. In fact, you saw it demonstrated right there with Notepad. The fact that I can edit a file on both sides pretty freely. You even saw me leaving my my Vim open, which led to those temporary swap files there. So there are lots of little nuances of the DOS side and the Unix side cooperating. And some of it is mitigated by Microsoft stuff. I do believe that the Windows subsystem for Linux, the things that allow the miraculous accomplishments of, let's see, where would I do that? I would go into my my network, and I would show you that there's a WSL available there. I believe there's a WSL available there. I don't see it there, so it might not be. My performance is going to nuke me. But the stuff that Microsoft does to allow the Windows subsystem for Linux to work mitigates, it steps in, and that could be where some of this performance stuff is coming from. Isn't that horrible? Boy, I got to bank my win before it slides and crashes here. But yeah, you do have to be concerned with carriage returns slipping into your text files. You do various things like your git config to make sure that you always do it the same way on all your repos regardless of the platform. And there's a few little touches. Maybe I'll make that the subject of a video in the future. The bane of our existence of carriage returns from the PC legacy world. Backslashes and carriage returns, right? Ugh. So if there's not any more questions, I'll wrap up this this live stream here, and I'll come back to you soon with the next step after this. This is all part of a build. Having that data location shared between all these containers is a big prerequisite to a lot of the stupid container tricks that are coming up. And they're not just container tricks. The email program, moving credentials around, I need it for so many reasons. And I didn't want to be doing such an important piece of it, that shared drive, without sharing into you all how I was accomplishing that, because there were so many of those detailed little steps, which you'll be able to find on my blog post as soon as I push it out. In fact, that's how I'll stop the video, right? I'll push this out, and you'll be able to see that post, and then I'll add this very video onto that page once I stop streaming and it exists. So everything I just talked about in this video, the GitHub Pages system using Jekyll has just published it. Oh, I've pushed my luck enough. I wanted to bring you to mikelevin.com/blog to show you that article appearing, but I'm going to wrap up there. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon, and don't forget to subscribe and press all those different buttons.